How's everyone? Thank you. So thank you so much for the lovely introduction. So our session right now is going to be a fireside chat, and I'll be speaking with the CEO of PawaPay on how they scaled from 0 to 1 billion transactions, and also understanding how they are looking to continue to grow from here. Just to give a little background as I invite Nikolai up to the stage. So PawaPay recently celebrated a major milestone by surpassing 1 billion transactions. They're a leading mobile money payment aggregator, and has rapidly expanded their services across multiple African countries, integrating various mobile money wallets to facilitate instant and cost-effective payouts. So this achievement in general highlights the growing adoption of mobile money solutions in Africa and PawaPay's commitment to providing reliable and merchant-first services. So there's a lot to unpack here on mobile money and the continued success in fintech in Africa. So without further ado, Nikolai?
Good morning, everyone.
Thank you, Nikolai. So maybe just to kick things off, it would be great to kind of give an introduction on yourself, your background, before we dive into the questions and the answers that the audience, I'm sure, are waiting to hear about.
Sure. So my name is Nikolai Barnwell. I am originally from Denmark. I came to Kenya in 2007 and have been a Kenyan resident since 2009.
Okay. So let's dive into things. So congratulations again on crossing 1 billion transactions. Take us back to the early days. So what was the big problem you set out to solve when you first started with PawaPay? And how has that vision evolved over time?
So we actually started PawaPay. We came from the merchant side. So we were busy at the time building a different company that was growing very rapidly and becoming quite a large company. And as we're trying to grow the company and take it into new countries, we kept running into this barrier of reliable payments. We kept banging our heads against providers, structures, licensing issues that made it very difficult to grow the business. So we started moving all those processes in-house. We started building the infrastructure ourselves. And then at some point realized, hey, this is probably something a lot of other people can benefit from. So why don't we hive this out and make a completely different company out of that? So that's how PawaPay came into being.
Okay, so you literally started from finding or seeing a pain point from past business that you were building, and then decided to transition into what PawaPay is today.
Yes, very much.
Okay. So thinking about that and maybe diving into mobile money a little bit. So mobile money has mobile money has transformed financial access on the continent. What do you think has been the biggest driver of adoption, and how has PawaPay positioned itself to ride that wave successfully?
Yeah, I think the thing that a lot of people overlook, especially from a distance, is that there's still about half the people on this continent don't have access to traditional banking services. They don't have a bank account. And for those of us who have that access readily available, it's very easy to overlook how transformational it is to have access to digital financial services. So without mobile money and without access to traditional financial infrastructure, a simple thing like making a transaction or sending somebody money literally means you're putting cash in an envelope and sending it with a bus 500 kilometers across the country if you want to help your grandma with some money to buy medicine. That's, of course, an extremely uneasy experience to have to undertake. If you don't have access to traditional digital financial services, a simple thing like where do you store your money becomes a question of, do you try and hide it in your mattress? Do you try to hide it in your kitchen? What if your husband comes home drunk and wants to take all the money? What if your kids want candy? And like the very basic financial services look very different without access to digital infrastructure. And mobile money, of course, comes in and just completely changes that. all of a sudden people have very simple, very easy access from feature phones to those very basic financial infrastructure.
Okay. No, definitely. Thanks for sharing that. I'm gonna transition a little bit to something that you pointed out around regulation. Having regulatory hurdles as you have been scaling across different countries on the continent. So as we all know, regulation, especially within the fintech space, is one of the most challenging things that people can kind of go through in order to scale. It's not impossible, as we know that a lot of companies, including yourself, have been able to kind of like overcome whatever hurdles. Can you talk a little bit more about how you've navigated the regulatory complexities, especially for the fact that you operate across different markets? And maybe also talk a little bit more about the markets that you operate in as well.
Sure. So we are, when you want to build a payments business across the continent, it's a little bit like a chicken and egg solution, because you can't sell a Pan-African payment solution before you have a Pan-African product. And it's very hard to build a business to generate revenue to build that product without having the merchants. We've now scaled up to 20 countries, so we have footprints across the continent. We have licenses in most of those countries. We're under full regulatory cover in all of them. And I think the journey anywhere in the world is really the regulators have a particular mandate to protect the users in that country, and that's a mandate that they have to take very serious. There's a lot of fraud going on. There's a lot of bad actors, especially when you handle people's money. You kind of have to be a little bit protective about who you allow to operate on the financial infrastructure. So there isn't really like an easy way out. You gotta wake up in the morning, you gotta put your pants on, and you gotta go to work, and it takes a long time. We've been at this now for more than 4 years across all the markets from day one, and we're still just getting into the licenses in the market we need to operate.
And can you talk a little bit about that journey? So what market did you start from? And if you're able to maybe expand on this, what market do you feel like was easy for you to, or easier for you to kind of get into, versus what market did you feel like was the hardest?
There's definitely none of them that were easy.
Okay.
We started, I think we got our first license in Zambia, maybe. We started, we rolled out Zambia, Tanzania, Rwanda, Ghana, some of the first markets, and then we've been working just continuously rolling out new licenses. So we get the last one we celebrated was getting Ethiopia, so we got a license in Ethiopia just before Christmas.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So thinking about your journey a little bit more, I would imagine that it hasn't always been easy as you've been scaling. So what were the key inflection points that you felt like accelerated your growth? And were there moments where it felt like things could go either way, either the different markets that you were scaling, or maybe when you had to pivot to take a different approach to growing?
Yeah, definitely. I think one of my favorite quotes is when Mark Andreessen talks about building a business, and he says when you're building a business, there's really only two states. There's euphoria and terror, and either everything is amazing and you're winning and you're high-fiving and clapping, or you're literally about to throw yourself off a cliff because the whole world is ending. Building PawaPay is definitely no exception. We operate in a quite complicated environment. We have more than 150 bank accounts across 25 countries, 20 countries with licensing and regulatory relationships. There's a lot of, I think, when you want to try and build a business, one of the key things is to figure out what is it that most people think is really easy, but you know that's really hard? And what is the thing that most people think is very hard, but is actually quite easy? One of the things about operating in this space on the continent is it's deceptively difficult operationally. on the surface, the tech seems quite easy. Oh, you're just building some integrations and you're connecting people. But operationally, operating all these different bank accounts across these different countries reliably with somewhat reliable infrastructure behind with the partners that you're working with is really, really, really tricky. So getting that right and understanding how you scale the operations in a very complex environment and sell that on to the merchants in a way that they don't have to deal with any of that is one of the big magic tricks that we're trying to do with PawaPay.
So talking about scaling, one of the big things is funding. So can you walk us through your fundraising journey or your funding journey from the beginning, where you, did you raise money, or were you more focused on becoming profitable and reinvesting that money back into your business? And what would you say was the best decision that you made when it came to your fundraising practices?
Yeah, so I'm lucky enough to be one of the veterans around in the Kenyan ecosystem. We started out investing with a different business back in 2010, doing seed investments. Back then we had a company called 88 miles per hour. For the Kenyans who've been around for long enough, you might remember companies such as Gafla, Futa, Ndundo, these guys. They're all businesses that we invested in back then. So we've seen the kind of cycle go through. Everyone gets super excited about tech in Africa, Silicon Savannah, all the funds flood in, money's pouring in. 2 years later, nothing really happened, and all the money leaves, it crashes. The first one we had a content bubble back in the early 2010s where everyone was building content businesses and thinking this was going to be the new holy grail. The last one we had was the Fintech. Between 2020, 2023, anything that had Fintech and Africa in the same sentence was, people were throwing money at these businesses. The amount of Fintechs that were raising in this period at completely insane, eye-watering valuations. And of course, this was in the period where we were building this business as well. So with a bit of, because we've seen so many of these cycles and we've been an investor ourselves, we've been on the other side of the table, we know a little bit more what are the things to watch out for when you take funding. And one of the alarm bells that kind of went off in the last bubble when we saw these valuations was, I think the key role that we've learned in all these years is if you want to win in this market, you need to first of all stay alive, because most businesses anywhere in the world don't stay alive, but particularly here, they die. So you got to figure out a way to stay alive. So when all this funding was coming in, we were looking at it, and we were seeing people taking in money that just from a distance looks very unsustainable, because what happens when you take in all this money, right? You got investors that come in. These investors, they have certain expectations of how much money they're going to get back out. So the very simple arithmetic is the company has to grow very significantly to be able to grow into those shoes and those expectations that the investors are setting. So of course what happens is you take a lot of money, you blow up your operations, you blow up your costs to try and grow your business into that future revenue. But these markets, they're great, they're coming. You can build very solid businesses here, but they are still relatively small. And they do still work and grow relatively slowly. Mobile money last year grew transaction volume 28% across sub-Saharan Africa, but it's still, there's a very long way to go before the whole GDP of the continent catches up with the GDP of the other regions in the world. So we're extremely optimistic it will definitely come, but it's fine to the future. So we're looking at this, seeing the mistake that a lot of the fintechs, what we thought was a mistake was take a lot of funding, hope that you can grow your business into it, but then what happens? The revenue doesn't take off as much. Then suddenly, you're starting feeling squeezed on your operations and your cost. Then you have to cut down staff, you turn the heat back down. And I think what most companies think is, it's easy, we can just turn down the heat again, then we can go back to profitability. But you can't. If you have a company that's growing really nicely and you're hiring a lot of people and you're high-fiving and you're all over the media and everyone is like, this is the great new thing, and then suddenly it's not, you start firing people, the good people will leave. And the business is only as good as the people you have in the business, as the people you have. So when the good people start leaving, the company starts to fall, it kind of spirals downward. So it's really, 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 really hard to turn back the heat. So you got to be very, very careful when you take funding and when you turn up the heat.
Yeah, I feel like that's a lesson that we've been learning across the ecosystem, especially over the past, let's say, year or 2 years, where funding seemed to have dried up, but now people are focusing on profitability and sustainability in order to stay alive, because with money comes expectations. But it's good to definitely hear your perspective in terms of how intentional you've been about growing your business and even the kind of capital that you've been taking in. I think another aspect when it comes to growth is partnerships, right? So what role has strategic partnerships with mobile money operators and other aggregators? How has that played into your growth with your business?
Yeah, so I think that's one of these things where I don't think you can't overstate how important it is to focus. Find the one thing that you're really good at, and then focus your entire business energy on that small thing. If you do that, then you can go and make very strong strategic partnerships with other businesses that are doing their thing that they are very good at, and then you can build very strong strategic partnerships. I think a mistake that we see a lot around us that we try very hard to avoid is to get very excited about a lot of things, try and do everything for everybody. When you have a lot of businesses that are trying to do everything for everybody all the time, no one really focuses in to do anything well, and you got a lot of people kind of servicing each other, but no one is really at the bottom doing the hard work to actually build the infrastructure below that needs to be built. So I think it can be very tempting to try and think, oh, you can build a business on strategic partnerships by just running around and finding all these other things you can plug into, and you don't actually have to do any of the hard work. But I would say for us, it's been very valuable to find, I mean, we're very niche, right? We don't do any card payments. We don't do anything. We just do mobile money, but we do it very well. And that means that we can find people who are doing other things very well, who want to plug into what we're doing and build a strategic partnership with them. So that goes both for our suppliers, and it also goes for some of our customers who are other companies, other payment companies that are just looking to have very strong payment rails on mobile money, and then we can serve them.
No, that's really good advice. So making sure you focus on your niche, but then finding ideal strategic partners to help you with all the other parts of your business to help you scale. Okay. I think, so talking about something that you also do very well. So you mentioned that you operate across 20 different countries, having started in Zambia. I think one of the things that has been discussed a lot, not even just in the fintech sector, but across, is operating across borders and cross-border expansion. What is the biggest lesson that you've learned with that? And like operating across multiple countries? And what advice would you have for founders that are thinking about scaling beyond the home market that they operate in?
I think going back again to this, understanding what looks easy but is hard, and what looks hard but is easy. So right now, for instance, we've connected every single mobile money wallet on the continent to each other. I can technically take money out of any wallet in Senegal and put it in any wallet in Zambia. That challenge is difficult, but we've got very good engineers, we've got very good tech people. I think we underestimated how hard the legislative and regulatory environment is. Because even though I can do it technically, getting the permission from regulators and central banks to do all these flows is really tricky. And I mean, we touched a little bit about the reasons why. It's, I think most of the regulators are really trying to do the right thing, but it's incredibly complicated. It's a big continent with a hugely complex infrastructure and interconnected network of countries. So understanding and really wrestling with all the legislative and regulatory restrictions we just want to build a good business. We just want to enable people to build their companies across the continent, help entrepreneurs build and grow the continent. understanding what we can and what we can't do, I think was a bigger challenge that we thought.
Okay. No, that's really good. And being intentional with that understanding, and then I guess that also had a lot to do with you deciding what next country you kind of move into based on the current company you were doubling down on as well.
I mean, we had a quite simple job, to be honest. Again, if you're very narrowly focused, it's very easy to know what to do next. So you're like, okay, well, we want to do mobile money. Well, what do? You make a list of all the mobile money wallets on the continent, and you start from the top. So when we made our integrations and we decided how to roll out the continent, that's literally what we did. We listed everyone. Of course, you have M-Pesa on the top, and then you go down the list and you check them out. It makes life very simple.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe looking away from the external point and looking internally at culture, because to get to a point like this with your business, you have to have built an intentional culture internally. So what principles or practices have helped you build a strong culture and have a good high-performing team across your different markets?
Yeah, I think to succeed in building any kind of business, you need to find a passion point that you really care about, and then you need to find really smart people, the best you can possibly find, who share that passion point. And with PawaPay, it's been that same journey. Been trying to find people who find our little niche, share the passion, get the smartest people we can possibly find who care about payments in Africa, and try and build them up. Of course, that's difficult because that's what everybody's going to say, and everybody's going to try and get the best talent. We build a culture around transparency, so we are extremely transparent in everything we do. We have a strict no DM policy across the whole company, so every conversation is out in the open. We have a quite flat hierarchy. We try to encourage the idea that what matters is what the right answer is, or the best idea. It doesn't matter where it comes from. And then we operate a lot on transparent autonomy and responsibility. So we try and work with this idea of an upside-down org chart, where you kind of imagine all the decisions are made out in the leaves. And the role of the management is really not to force decisions through or try and centralize all decision-making, but the guys that are out in the field, that are working every day, that are sitting in the M&O offices, that are sitting and doing the coding, they understand the problems much better than us at management. So our role is really just to support the branches going up, make sure that we provide context, that we communicate what is the idea, what is the goal that we're trying to do, and then let people make the decisions. Because smart people, they want autonomy. You're not going to get smart people working if you give them a checklist every day and say like, hey, do this. Smart people want a problem, and they want to be given the freedom to solve that problem in the best way they can. So we've been trying to do that.
Yeah, that definitely sounds like a great strategy to building like a great team. So my final question, because unfortunately we're out of time. If you were to start over today with everything you've learned about scaling PawaPay, what would you do differently?
You gave me a warning about this question, and I was really I've been trying to find out what the best, without sounding really, really lame or corny. I think, like very practically, I think probably remittance, getting into the remittance flows earlier, understanding more the regulatory. It's a very complex market, moving money in and out with the central bank's restrictions. Technically, it's actually not that difficult, and I think it's one of those things we thought it was going to be easy because we were very good at the technical part. The regulatory part, the treasury part, it's been a massive learning experience for us. Treasury and on this continent is one of the things where there's a small club of people who are like, oh, we get this is really like a bigger problem than most people understand. I think had we woken up to that a little bit earlier, like the flows are just insane. Last year, in 1 year alone, the flows of the remittance flows into mobile money grew with $10 billion in 1 year. So like we're trying to do all these other problems, solving problems for like e-commerce merchants and everything, and then there's just this like mountain coming on the side of money flowing into mobile money wallets through remittance, which is a quite new thing.
Yeah.
So looking back, I mean, if we had another 24 hours in the day, we should probably have gotten onto that a little bit earlier.
Okay. Sorry, now that you've mentioned that, this is going to be my last question. So looking ahead, is there a possibility for you to get into the remittance play, or is there a new country that you might want to explore?
I mean, so we're already doing it. I think we were later to the party than we thought we should have. We should have been. So just, I mean, just to be clear, we don't do remittance, right? Like we work with partners who do remittance. We do the technical termination and the treasury management for them.
All right, that's it for today. Thank you so much, Nikolai. And I hope you guys have learned a little bit more about PawaPay's journey. And Nikolai is around to answer any questions that you may have for the rest of the day.